Okay, so we're going to do it on truth tables. And the truth table is basically just you have some simple sentences given by P and Q. You don't have to, and you can think of them as variables that either are true or false. They get a T or an F. It's one of the two. So what I'm going to work with here, in general, we're going to have a few different cases. We're going to have the conjunctive, where the conjunctive is, this is like an and. Like, it's like, this is like the word and, okay? Like P and Q, P and Q. We're going to have a disjunctive, which is an upside down V, and this is kind of like the word or. And this is going to mean the same as P or Q. We're going to have a conditional, which is going to look like this, and that's going to be if A, then B. It's going to be an if-then statement. If A, then B. And then the last one we look at is called the biconditional, which is this. And that one we say if and only if. So that one we say if and only if. I think I'm going to grab another marker real quick. If you just give me 1 second. I think this one is running a little dry. Okay, here we go. Perfect. Okay. So I already started doing the conjunctive one, which is the and. And for this one, what we did is I wrote out the possible values for P and Q. And the first case is that P is true and Q is also true. And the next case is that P is true and Q is false. Well, P could be false and Q could be true, or they could both be false. Now here's how the conjunctive table goes. You should have this memorized, but it should make kind of common sense too, right? The possibilities are that P is true and Q is true. Well, if both of these are true, like say P is the statement Bob went to the store, and Q is the statement Bob likes ice cream, if he went to the store and liked ice cream, then the entire statement is true, and I'll put a T over here. Okay? Now, the second one is true and false, right? True and false. And I'll write a true under here and a false under here, right, to correspond, because P has the value T and Q has the value F, right? Just keep tabs on the left-hand side. Well, if I say Bob went to the store and Bob likes ice cream, but he really doesn't like ice cream, that's a false statement. Well, since it's an and, that means the entire statement is actually going to be false. And I'm going to put a false over here. Okay? Now, the next one we're going to do is that P is false and Q is true. So what do you think this is going to be? I'll give you a second to think about it. Well, this is going to be false also, right? Because if I say Bob went to the store and that's false, and he likes ice cream, that's true, it doesn't matter that one of the statements is true, because it's an and. If I say he went to the store and likes ice cream but didn't go to the store, that whole statement is false. So that's a false statement. Now, the last one should be obvious. They're both false. P is false. He didn't go to the store. He doesn't like ice cream. So the conjunction, or saying one and the other, if they're both false, then the combination of the two with the and is false. Okay. So that's how that one goes. And you can think of P as Q as sentences. You don't care what the sentences are. All you care is that one of them is true and one of them is false. Alright, next we're going to look at the or, which is right over here. Okay? Well, before I do the or, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce something called the negation. Now, the negation just flips the sign, right? So, if P is equal to true, then not P is false. It's like putting the word not. Bob went to the store. Negation of that, well, Bob didn't go to the store. Only one of them can be true. And also, if P is false, then, if P is equal to a false value, then not P is equal to a true value. Okay, so we're going to do that, and I'm going to make a slightly more complicated AND problem. Okay, so I'm going to make a slightly more complicated one, not by much. I'm just going to say we have P and we have Q, and the values are true, 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 false, false, true, and false, false, just like we had before. And that's just for keeping tabs. Now my actual problem I'm going to solve not P and Q. Okay, so I'm going to solve not P and Q. And to do that, well, I'm going to fill in my table. If P is true, then negation of P or not P is going to be false. If Q is true, then Q is going to be true. Right? Now, remember, so I have a false and a true. So remember, if the only way the AND is true, the only way the conjunction of two things can be true is if both of the two statements are true. But I have a false statement and a true statement here, so this is going to be a false statement. So inputs of true, true, in this case, evaluate to false. So what happens if my inputs are P is true and Q is false? Well, let's look at the conjunctive. Well, P is true, so not P is false again, right? Because my value of P is true, but I'm negating it in this column, so it's not. So if P is true, not P is false. The value of Q is also false. And remember, for the conjunctive to be true, I have to have a true here and a true here. A true here and a true here, right? But they're both false. So again, this is false. Now I have the case where I have P is false. Well, if P is false, the negation of P is true. So I have a true here, and Q is true also. So there's a true here. And I have a true here and a true here, which gives me a value of true. Okay? Now let's look at the last case. In the last case, we have that P is false. Well, if P is false, not P is going to be true. And since Q is false and we're not doing anything to Q, Q is going to stay false. But that doesn't really matter because the AND, or the conjunctive, is going to be true only in the case where there's a true here and there's a true here. But that's not the case. So the result is going to be false, sorry. Okay. So if my truth table is not P and Q, inputs of false, false give me a false value. Inputs of false, true give me a true value. Inputs of true, false give me a false value. And true, true gives me a false value. Right? Which is slightly different than the actual conjunctive table. Right? This is the unmodified conjunctive. Right? Okay. I'm going to do one more with the parentheses with the and if you have more questions on the other operators, the and, the or, the biconditional, or the conditional, feel free to ask. But I'm going to do one more like this. And for this one, again, I'm going to draw my standard truth table for two variables or two simple statements. My simple statements are going to be P and Q. Again, I'm going to have P is true, Q is true, P is true, Q is false, P is false, Q is true, P is false, Q is false. In this case, I'm going to put a negation, and I'm going to have P and Q like this. Okay? Now the parentheses means you do the parentheses before you do anything else. Okay? So here's how this is going to work. Well, I start in the side of parentheses. Always work in parentheses. Well, what is P? P is true. What is Q? Q is true. Now, I do the parentheses first. True and true. Well, what is that equal? At least I'm reversing the colors this time. Well, that's going to give me a true value. The conjunction is always true. If there's a true on the left and right, then my conjunctive is true. But now I'm negating the parentheses, right? That's the last thing I evaluated in here, which is the conjunction. Well, if I negate true, I get false. Okay, let's try the next one. I always work in the parentheses first. Well, the value of P here is true. The value of Q here is false. So the value of true and false, remember, is going to be false. It's only true if there's a true on the left and there's a true on the right. So this is false. Now I am going to so this is the last thing I evaluated in the parentheses. And now I'm going to negate this, right? I'm going to negate the parentheses. The last thing I evaluated in the parentheses, I'm going to negate it. Well, this is false, so in the negation, I negate the parentheses. The negation of false is true. Okay? Now I go to the next one. Well, P is false. Q is true. And remember, for the conjunctive, this middle term here, this is going to evaluate the false because it's only true if there's a true on the right and there's a true on the left. We don't have a true on the left, so that means the conjunctive is false. And I negate a false outside the parentheses. That's what I'm doing in this column, negating the parentheses. I am going to get a true here. Okay? Now, the last one I'm going to do is they're both false. So P is false. You can see in the left-hand column P is false and Q is false. So P is false. Q is false. False and false is false because they would both have to be true, but I'm going to negate the false and put it over here. And I'm negating the parentheses in this column, so this gets a true. Alright? So the last thing I did is the evaluation of my truth statement, my last operation, which is going to be here. So this tells me, for this complex sentence I have over here, the negation of P and Q, right, this compound statement, if my inputs are a true statement and a true statement, then this statement's going to be false. My compound statement is false. If P is true and Q is false, then my compound statement becomes true. If P is false and Q is true, my compound statement is true. And if they're both false, this compound statement evaluates to true. Okay? So I hope this helps and answers your question or helps progress things a little bit. If not, let me know and we can take a look at some of these other operators. And I hope to hear from you soon. Thanks and have a great day.